Yeah, thanks everyone for joining today. Appreciate you all for coming through in the crowd. My name, if you don't know, is Hunter. I'm the community manager over here at Arbitrum. In today's Twitter space, we're speaking with STFX, or the folks over at STFX, the SocialFi marketplace for investable trades. A sentence I never thought that would come out of my mouth, but I'm very interested to talk about it today because it's so different than what we're used to. How's it going, guys?
Great, yeah. I mean, that's kind of why I was so excited to come on. Like, because initially this was an investment that came up on my radar. With like speaking to Jason from Telegram, and like he was kind of crazy bullish on the idea, and it's something that I can understand really, really easily coming from like the Discord server background, let's say, because we all share trades already, and I suppose this is kind of a way for us to capture and scale what we already do in trading, what we're already kind of using to scale up in like trusted non-efficient ways, and this is like a more efficient and more trustless way to capture like a social trading side of crypto.
No, totally. And I think when I was reviewing actually, like the website and then the app earlier, it truly made me very interested to kind of speak about it today, and just get a little more info. So I'm sure everyone in the audience too is kind of like waiting to hear what we're going to talk about. And just to make sure as well, I almost forgot to introduce y'all. We have Murad, by the way, who's strategy over at STFX, and Peach, who's a little duck right there, who is community over at STFX as well. And I think I don't know if Hassan's on the main account or if he's coming on his own. But yeah, we have a full house.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so Zero X Hessian, he's going to be joining us in about a minute. He's requested to speak now as well. Yeah.
Hey guys.
Good afternoon, bro.
Right on time. And Hessian is a quant trader, by the way. Awesome.
Yeah, you'll find that a lot. Sorry, on the STFX team, you'll find that a lot. Like I'd say the majority of us kind of come from a trading background and like a background of seeing how people would use this product, which I think is why we're all so excited. You kind of see a mad turnout from the team and the ambassadors and everything, and it's because we're doing something that like we all really understand because we all come from that background of trading and like using servers, aggregating groups that find trades together, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, I love conversations like these too, just because my background is very, very far from trading. Frankly, like I got into crypto with no financial background, literally at all. Like, if anything, I have more like an engineering marketing background. So, like, these are always the most interesting conversations.
Yeah.
So, just to get into it, as I mentioned earlier, STFX is you guys describe it as a social fi marketplace for investable trades. I think the first question there, most obvious, is what is SocialFi, and how does STFX fit into it?
Do you want me to cover this, Murad? Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
So SocialFi is basically the intersection of like DeFi and social media, let's say, and that's really quite general. So you see people kind of use DeFi to make just generally social media platforms, and we definitely see the value in that. But I think at a base level, we kind of already use Twitter to kind of and other social media platforms to kind of trade socially. And so our approach is more like social trading. So we're kind of saying if you have a single trade that you want people to be able to fund in a vault and you be able to manage the vault, that's kind of what our platform's about. And if on the flip side, you don't have an edge and you're looking for like measurable ways to see who has an edge and help them scale that, it's more about that than it is just the base level like social interaction. It's kind of like the trading side of it is what we're trying to attack. Sorry.
So in a way, it's like, and definitely correct me if I'm wrong here, but like kind of the ability for people to not only in a way like copy people's trades, but more so like propose trades that people can take and then have other people invest into them if they think it's a good idea, kind of thing.
Yeah. So at a base level, you could think of it like a trading view social page, but that you can invest in each trade, for example, and that individual person can manage to a certain degree that's visible. They can manage the position with set parameters that you can see. So at a base level, yeah, you could say copy trading, but it's kind of a much breaking it down to like a single trade, like to the base level, like trade by trade. instead of like generalized asset management means that we can do all kinds of like on platform and on chain statistics that allows you to scale like how you actually trade. Instead of saying like with general asset management firms, it's kind of like there's like a burden of profit when you become you maybe join a prop shop. This is about when you have an edge, sharing it, and somebody can then scale into like what you're good at. So very quickly, like into like launch a platform, because we have like single trade measurements, we should get a load of statistics that let you see who's good at what kind of strategies. And so instead of being able to say you just generally copy trade someone, you can say I only want to copy trade someone when they're like long and like they're like on Bitcoin pairs, or like specifically saying what strategy somebody's good at, and like being able to measure that on chain and like scale into that is kind of our goal. So it's not generally just being able to like, because I think there's a high level of trust in copy trading, because you just kind of generally a portion of your portfolio follows whatever trade that somebody makes. And at the same time, in crypto, a lot of copy trading so far has been trust based, which is kind of against the purpose of DeFi, because the purpose of DeFi really is to enable us to do these kind of things with less and less factors of trust. And I think with certain like NFT projects, for example, we've seen vaults filled and it completely at a manager's discretion, and they can literally kind of take the money or like just kind of blow it on like a ridiculous trade. And with our platform, the idea is that everything's visible. You can measure like previously when somebody took a trade, what they said, look on the chart to see like exactly what somebody said at a specific time and what they actually did in execution. And that allows us to say like you could scale up if you're really good at execution, if you're really good at finding like specific alt strategies, instead of just a generalized copy trade that like maybe your strategy doesn't work forever and it's more about capturing it for that month. And all of those kind of nuances that really fit into like the way that we actually trade is not really like single dimensional. It's kind of multifaceted, and we're trying to make sure that we build around that.
So like a couple of ways that I usually describe it to people. One is you can think of it as a Kickstarter for trading ideas, right? The other way is think of it as if trading view charts or trading view links were also very easily joinable or investable or fundraisable in one click, right? So that's pretty much what we're building here. We're making it extremely easy to essentially create a vault or create a vehicle that's completely on-chain and permissionless and non-custodial. Create a vehicle that will allow anybody in the world to join your trade idea. And obviously, similarly on the other side, anybody can see other trading ideas out there and essentially invest in them or join them in one click also, right? And we're essentially at the intersection of two trends. First of all, many people have tried building decentralized asset management on chain ever since as early as 2016, but there's a mismatch in my opinion. And when I say decentralized asset management on chain, I mean essentially on chain funds, right? I think the crypto space in general is extremely fast paced. It is very fast paced. It is very kind of like OCD, and a lot of the participants are like very impatient, right? And I think when it comes to funds, like in TradFi, a lot of kind of the end consumers of funds are people with extremely long time horizons, relatively conservative, using it as a small part of their portfolio, like to hedge, etc., right? But here we are doing something different. Instead of having these funds that are like portfolios which last years or months, we have created vaults that are literally dedicated to just one trade at a time, right? And so instead of it being a portfolio, is just one trade, one asset. Right now, we're starting off with perps, but we're going to have different asset classes there, specifically crypto native ones. And essentially, we think that the fact that our vaults are focused on only one trade at a time makes it, first of all, a lot more fast paced, much higher turnover. Generally, I think there's going to be a lot more of these kind of short and singular and focused ones rather than long-term portfolio ones. And here, of course, the manager is very important, and his past behavior is very important, and kind of his past reputation and performance is very important. But here, arguably, you also get to kind of analyze the idea and behind any single vault, and see whether that's something you like, whether that's something you're interested in joining or not, right? So that's kind of like one part of the equation. The second part of the equation is, as I'm sure many of the listeners know, since the kind of summer of 2021 in particular, DeFi has kind of been undergoing this voltification of everything trend, as they call it. Essentially, many different things in the last cycle have been sort of packaged into these vaults, right? You've seen this with yield farming and leveraged yield farming. You've seen this with liquidity management strategies. You've seen this most famously with options, or kind of these kind of option vaults dedicated to options, right? Or simple option strategies. Now, what unites all of these is the fact that most of these are focused on yield generation. We are building sort of more aggressive vaults, right? Instead of yield generation, we're focused on directional trading, right? At least for now, right? I think these STVs, which we call them, the single trade vaults, they are going to be generalizable to many different kinds of asset classes and instruments. But for now, we're essentially building kind of fast-paced, aggressive versions of them, which are essentially leveraged perpetual trades, right? And we are deliberately starting off with perpetuals because it's the highest volume, highest liquidity product in crypto, relatively easy to understand. But we think that if kind of community likes this, and we already have over 1,000 users just after 2 days after launch, but we think that if community likes this, we can expand to obviously spot, NFTs, options, kind of low cap altcoins, and many different kinds of things, right? So this is just like a lot of ideas, a lot of themes right off the top of my head, but super happy to dive into greater detail on any of these.
I mean, one thing I'd potentially add here for anyone in the audience who's a bit skeptical is the kind of why. And for me, the thing that won me over, the thing that convinced me, was just going on Twitter and seeing, people like GCR posting P&L. This is kind of, the STFX platform is a way for people to kind of transparently and permissionlessly engage in trades like that, get involved with them, which is interesting, but also kind of, it's a form of social status in a sense, and that's the really powerful thing I think about the platform.
Yeah, I think those kind of things being scalable and measurable, because at the moment it's inefficient. It's still based on trust, and like in that gray area that exists on crypto Twitter, there's so much LARPing and like hindsight kind of trading that impresses people. And really, what you need is something that's like an on-chain measurement of what somebody said and what they actually did when they said it. So they said they were going to long. How good did they execute it? And like those kind of things, when you build up reputational like statistics and like your own badges and ways to show off your skills, those kind of things really are scalable. I mean, in the trusted world, like as a non-wallet, as a KYC person, you might take your reputation and go to a prop desk, but like the point of DeFi is to make sure that people can be those kind of participants without factors of trust, as simply a wallet. So like as you build up reputational features, those are scalable. It makes it easier to invest in somebody and to invest in a trade when you can see that somebody has succeeded with it before, as opposed to with Twitter, where there's so much noise, so much LARPing because of the gray area where no one's really accountable for what they've actually posted and what they've done when they posted it.
Wonderful overview, by the way, of just like giving us like a very quick kind of dive there into STFX and what you guys currently offer. I think like maybe one question, and maybe it sounds a little dumb, but I think for products, not like STFX itself, but like like the copy trading stuff and the ones that we were saying that it's different from. I feel like traditionally, like some people just take the approach of like, okay, I don't have to do any research, and I'll just pretty much just do whatever that person's doing, and just in a way, they've been successful X amount of time. I'm just going to hope for the best. Do you think that's the right approach when like getting into any of these vaults, or is it really?
So
yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So I think this was something that me and Wise, who's come on as advisor, like this is something we spoke about a lot when I came on, which is that people already copy trade on chain, and there's kind of emotional elements to that already. It's kind of we see somebody like a wallet profitable, and you put a certain amount of money into it, but it's kind of it's really hard to like make risk adjusted strategies for that. It's really hard to scale those kind of like ideas. I mean, how much how much of your portfolio can you use to copy someone's trade when you don't know what their stop loss is, and there's a delay to being able to see what they're actually doing, like and like react to it. Maybe you're not exactly there when they've like executed. Those kind of things are just inefficient, and we already do them, which is, I think, probably like one of the bull cases I saw when I came on, is we already trade this way, and there's just not really an efficient way for us to capture it in my eyes. But yeah, to
Yeah,
answer, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, yeah, there's also a question about permissionlessness, right? People can go and copy trade, like you said, if they want. This is a way of kind of putting, I mean, in a sense, we put guardrails around it because, we have a reputation system. And there are many incentives for someone who has a lot of reputation on our platform not to go and kind of lose all their investors' money. And so, in a sense, I'd argue that what we're building here is something like what already exists, but puts a bit of a safety net for retail investors as well.
But I mean, those kind of factors allow people to scale both sides of it. So the more that you can prove and the more rails there are, the more money you can put into something. It's kind of like how we justify like scaling into trades is the more that we can kind of know about the trade. And so this is kind of a way for us to kind of take what's already happening and step it up as well. So step up the volume that kind of does that in my eyes. But yeah, like I think, to answer your question, like I think people using our platform do get that level of discretion. It's more discretionary copy trading than it would be copy trading. It's like, do I think this person's good at the strategy that they're actually espousing? So somebody might be really good at shorting Bitcoin in a bear market. They might be terrible at longing altcoins in a bull run, or like there's things that like certain people are good at, but also they may lose a lot of money on other things. And you could probably outperform somebody by knowing what their edge is by using our platform, which I think is probably one of the more interesting things that will come about, is that people may even like outperform somebody by knowing when they're good.
I think one other thing I would say is essentially, to add to Peach's point, social trading, copy trading, and all of these things is already happening in our space, and it's happening a lot, right? The problem is it's happening kind of all over the place. It's happening on crypto Twitter, Telegram, Discord, Reddit. Kind of, it's a little bit all over the place, right? And we're, first of all, trying to aggregate it, and second of all, we're trying to make it possible for managers or traders or kind of vault creators to monetize their idea, right? Right now, people post a chart or a trading idea or a squiggle on their Twitter page, for example, and there's really nothing that they can earn from this other than maybe a little bit of clout, right? But here, the largest chunk of performance fees is going to go to the manager if their trading idea ends up being profitable. So really, you can think of our platform as a machine where you can turn your reputation or popularity or knowledge into kind of additional gains, additional leverage, and kind of additional income generation, so to speak, for yourself, right?
I think that was an interesting point that you and Marusha spoke about on our call the other day, that like, so you can increase your ability to capture trades and the leverage without actually bringing your like liquidation price up. So you may have the knowledge and the capacity to kind of take a load of trades that have a load of liquidity, but you yourself may only be able to fill like 1% of that, even though you have the capacity to take it. So it's kind of a way to gain, to like almost like leverage, but without actually bringing up your stop loss or your liquidation. But the leverage is based on what you can prove. So it's like, can you prove that you're good at this strategy? And that's kind of up to community. We give like features at the moment, base features that are like really obvious ways to prove things. But obviously, community is going to run ahead and find creative ways to show they're good at like a really weird strategy. And I think it's our goal to kind of make the platform as fun as possible, so that we can build around how people like do use it in the most fun ways.
So one thing you mentioned earlier was the idea of it these single trade vaults, or STVs. I think that's the right abbreviation. Is that different from what you guys currently have on Alpha right now, or is that supposed to be kind of like the main product when you guys launch fully? And what is it?
Yeah, so we already have STVs live. As you know, we are building on top of other decentralized derivative exchanges. At the moment, we are on top of GMX, which itself is on top of Arbitrum. So the current version we have is, you can kind of think of it as a testnet version. Instead of doing a testnet, we are already on Arbitrum mainnet. However, for the sake of security and early rollout, we are currently limiting our vault sizes to $200, or rather, to be precise, 200 USDC. And essentially, you can kind of think of as our current version, current competition that we're running, as kind of our MVP, as our testnet. It's our way of getting, first of all, early feedback from the community, kind of prioritize the requested features, and make sure that our roadmap is like correct and is in line with what people want, what people don't want, etc. Right? And generally, we wanted to release this kind of alpha mainnet, as we call it, in order to kind of share the vision with the community, build up the community a little bit more. And we think of ourselves as even like SocialFi first and DeFi second. And we think that community is the most important thing. And that's why I think it's very important for us to kind of like release the product and the features as early as possible, because we are doing our best to be bottoms up instead of top down. And we really want to be community first. So we're essentially like in the weeds in the Discord, talking to users every single day and trying to figure out where to spend our attention in the most kind of effective and productive ways in terms of like feature rollout in the coming couple of weeks every time, right? So we already have STVs live. There you can think of them as kind of like mini version of what's yet to come. But essentially, we already have GMX based, perpetuals focused STVs live, kind of on our alpha mainnet, to answer your question.
Yeah, so just to speak a bit more about the competition, like it's up to $100,000 in prizes, because we really value like we want, and also the part of the reason why we lowered the vault size so much is that we want to have as much inclusion in this as possible, because obviously the people we're targeting, like to be traders on the platform, to be managers of the vaults, we want the best traders no matter the size of their portfolio, because the idea is that if you have a good idea, if you have like a good skill that you can prove, those kind of things are scalable, and you don't necessarily need to be like I think Kobe said it was like you need $10 million to be able to trade, and maybe that's true, but I mean, most people at prop shops don't have that, and this kind of allows you to scale up what your skill is, so that you can maybe like trade full time when you don't actually have the portfolio size to. So we are looking for the best traders, and we're not really like looking for just volume with this competition. And we want to make sure that like with each feature that we roll out each week in the competition, we get like hard tested, we get like some of the more degen people hard testing some of the vaults, and some of the more like focused people testing the vaults. And ultimately, like I said, the prizes go up to $100,000, because we do really, and there's 20 of the top people will get prizes, 10 on each side, the manager and investor, because we really do value that early feedback, like what features you actually want on our roadmap earlier, what kind of things you're using the platform for, and we want to make sure we're building around that.
And how would you say the current vaults then differ from like any, I guess, other type of DeFi vault, like from a user perspective?
So they're like, go on, you take this, Brad. Sorry.
Yeah, so I would say there are two key differences. First of all, like I've already said, the vast majority of vaults out there today focus on yield generation. And we, instead of being focused on yield generation, which I would argue is somewhat conservative, instead, we are kind of trying to capture a different part of the market. We're trying to capture part of the market that is more directional, kind of more aggressive, and higher volatility, right? Furthermore, I will say that the way crypto works is that a lot of the yield in the DeFi space, it's available when it's a bull market, when there's a lot of eyeballs on this industry, and a lot of, I would say like 85% or more of the yield that we've seen over the past 2-3 years, it's unsustainable, because the majority of it was pretty much fueled by kind of creation of new tokens and the subsequent new emissions or inflation of the new token, right? Now, there are some strategies that are a lot more sustainable than others. And I think protocols such as Ribbon and other kind of option-based vaults protocols have proven that there are certain kind of yield generation that you can have that is more sustainable. That doesn't mean that it is without risk. There's always risk, but it is a little bit more sustainable. Although, given how much popularity those vaults have found, it's safe to say that that yield is already sort of somewhat saturated, at least in our space, right? And so I do think that in the next couple of cycles, yield in the space overall, as the space gets more efficient, is going to generally trend down, right? There isn't going to be this kind of like this super easy yield that we've seen in like July of 2020. That's probably not going to be a thing anymore, right? Now, that being said, to the contrary of that, I think directional trading is still here to stay for the next 1,000 years, because it will always be part of human nature to bet, to invest, to trade, and to try to predict prices, right? On top of directional trading being here, I would also say in general that it is my opinion that trading in general is going to be the number one use case of crypto technologies for the next 10 years at least, right? And I think essentially like directional trading, and by that I mean like trading of spot altcoins, perpetuals, futures, etc., right? I think that as a whole is still going to be here, still going to be like the highest volume activity, highest liquidity activity, and it's going to be the biggest thing that people engage in, right? And we are essentially trying to package these products into vaults that, and here goes the kind of like the third biggest difference, right? Our vaults are completely permissionless. This means that anybody in the world can go and create an STV, and they can also obviously go and invest in an STV, right? Right now, most of the options vaults or yield farming vaults or all of these other things, they are essentially like whitelisted by the DAO, or they're whitelisted by the contract creators, right? And most of these projects, they have like 5 to 8 vaults that kind of roll over every month or every couple of weeks, but it's a relatively limited choice, right? Here, we are allowing anybody with an Arbitrum wallet out there to go and create a vault at the cost of less than 1 cent, right? We are very proud of the fact that our vaults are some of the earliest permissionless vaults. And we believe that once we start making our vault creation process more and more custom, you're going to see an explosion in the different kind of vaults out there, different kind of managers out there, different kinds of strategies out there. So essentially, our goal is to create a new kind of DeFi Lego, right? Money Legos, as they call it, right? The new DeFi financial primitive, a new DeFi financial vehicle, right? And we think that these kind of single trade vaults are actually a lot more promising than long-term portfolios that have kind of existed like since the early 1900s, right? And so because of how much smaller and more focused and faster paced there are, I think eventually, like in a year or a year and a half from now, you're going to see thousands, tens of thousands of them, right? And it's essentially our goal right now to build a platform that is kind of multi-chain, that is multi-dex, that is multi-integration, kind of multi-instrument, obviously, and we want people's imaginations to like kind of run wild in terms of what kind of STVs they're going to go out there and create.
Yeah, just to touch on like the customizable nature, because I think there's something in that that's maybe like a more like an interesting answer to your question. Ultimately, as we build out, we want both sides to be discretional, because obviously there are going to be managers that stand out, and there's going to be managers that want to create positions that maybe only have like X amount of liquidity. They're not something that they could fill an entire vault for, or something that's more like they don't want the whole world to see their execution terms. And our vaults as well, like over time, we're going to build out so that like the manager side is discretional, so that you could say, maybe there's like 100 people who invested in your previous vaults like 2 or 3 times, and you could say, here's an idea that I'm only sharing with those people, or only sharing with people that have like signed a transaction to subscribe to me. Certain like confirmations for the manager side as well, so that they're not just sharing a trade. But those are kind of things that build up very quickly, because we can build out statistics on the single trade side. So because each vault is like so fast paced, we can have like statistics that can allow the manager to be discretional as well. And that also allows like all kinds of like fun prospects with like the vaults themselves, and say the participants are essentially a conversion community, a community of people who actually invest in the person themselves. And so that they may like airdrop people like themselves. They may see like a list of wallets that invest in them 2 or 3 times, and give them better terms on vaults, or give them higher visibility. So ultimately, like, we want both sides of this to be like to be customizable. And I think that makes our vaults kind of unique, because like mostly vaults now are kind of base level. They're not really kind of customizable to what we're trying to do. So, and at the same time, I like so be like building out on like Arbitrum with GMX, I think creates a high amount of efficiency, like on the execution side, that wouldn't really be possible for vaults like this. Like as we build out, we're going to keep that in mind, and like and build out, making sure that everything works as smoothly as we can do it now, because GMX is like the perfect first execution partner, really, with the speed and efficiency of Arbitrum. But anyway, I'll let you go.
I love, by the way, how you guys like perfectly like kind of piggyback off each other's answers. It's like I don't think I've ever seen another team do it. It's great. um, uh, so then, alongside GMX already being on Arbitrum, because it sounds like that was one of the reasons maybe why you kind of made the move to the big blue chain, as I call it. Is there any other reason why you decided to launch on Arbitrum as well?
I think, I mean, I can probably start with this one, but I think a big thing here is cost, right? We want to be permissionless. Anyone can open a vault for like 10 cents, if that. And so transaction fees are low, which means the barrier to entry is also low. And so, someone with $20 in their account can invest in an STF with us. And that's something that they can do with a very, very minimal cost. And so that's obviously a big benefit of working on Arbitrum.
I would add as well that we see a lot of like, we are generally quite bullish Arbitrum. I mean, obviously that in itself is kind of something that drives us to say, if like GMX is an MVP, let's say, but like you can see the viability and volume kind of coming to Arbitrum, and it does make it kind of more like logical to say, well, here's a place that will likely have like options and things that can like viably have volume with GMX as an MVP. So it like, we are bullish, like Arbitrum, sorry, generally.
And I think it's really cool how like teams like yourselves that like are really truly innovating on the side of DeFi, where like people, like people I think initially thought, once kind of DeFi, I think what they call it, like DeFi Summer 2.0 or something like that. Like I feel like people really thought like DeFi kind of innovation ended with that. But I think we're truly seeing again like products like STFX.
Yeah, I mean, so I saw a thread the
Rise.
other day that was about real yield, and I think there are like, I kind of prefer the new narratives that are kind of about like, so trading does make money, and so you could, I mean, an exchange is one way to approach that, but in exchange, I think this is a new way to approach that we're already doing. But it's kind of like, I see some of the most successful projects coming up. They're factoring into that. They're not kind of being too idealistic about like what like changing people's behavior and like expecting kind of results that maybe aren't logical. I think the real yield thesis is that like there are things that can actually make money, and so like it's like focus on those things, to put it very bluntly, to like focus on those things. And I think like previous DeFi cycles maybe got a bit ridiculous, and I kind of prefer the idea of saying, what can we actually say has sustainable means to make profit. And for us, it's saying like scale the profitability of like low time frame trading kind of thing.
That totally makes sense. And again, I think like that's honestly what makes me like so like frankly like so proud to be even part of part of this Arbitrum community is because it's like, to me, it's like there's just so much different types of innovation going on that I guess I just would have never really thought. Like, don't get me wrong, people love to like ape into protocols that have like thousands of percentages of APY that we all know isn't sustainable, but just kind of fun to meme on for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like the protocols that come and like truly deliver sustainable yields, like you were saying, like the hashtag real yield movement that's currently going on, like that stuff's really really important and truly like going to be a huge factor in building really what like the financial infrastructure that really should be built on chain and not traditionally like it is currently with banks and everything else, you know?
Yeah. I think that's something that at its base level, like a lot of like the success in DeFi comes from saying what already happens and how can we remove trust factors in that? How can we make it so that you don't need to like know individuals and those be KYC'd? How can people participate as a wallet? And I think projects that kind of approach things that we already do and say, how do we remove trust? Those are the ones that I see really succeeding, like in the next in this coming cycle, the next cycle, let's say. And I think that's why I wanted to dedicate time to this team and this project, is because I see it as something that I do. Like I have been socially trading. My friends all trade in a way that could definitely be scaled using this platform. And like there's ways to prove yourself, like that they'll figure out that like we won't even realize, and we'll build that. That's kind of our goal, is to make it so that community can run ahead in the same way that people find ways to like prove themselves on Twitter and they start like superimposing like what they like their own tweets on a chart and things like that. We want to give features that allow people to kind of prove all kinds of things that they're doing, and that just be scaled, which I think really goes into the kind of the real yield thesis, because that in itself is something that makes money. I mean, one thing that you can say, that one of the only things that you could say, sorry, like consistently is true in this market, is that after whatever big move, there's some anon that somewhere that traded it really well and made like a huge amount of money. And that's kind of the only true statement that you could always say is true, that there's someone somewhere that traded that really well. And I think just being able to long that idea is kind of an exciting prospect for me, that you could kind of set up a trade that says some anon somewhere's like got the trade and has the ability to execute on it, even when I don't have the edge. Yeah, that's kind of really exciting for me. And I do, like I said, I think that in itself can produce like real yield. It's not kind of a speculative yield. It's more so that there's profit in trading.
Totally agreed. No, very very well put. And I think maybe just to kind of touch on more of like more like a general side of things now. Being that this feels kind of like a flight from something that currently exists in TradFi. Uh, can you kind of speak to the mismatches of TradFi and DeFi currently that exist?
Yeah, I mean, I could probably start this off. I mean, I guess for us, like our biggest comparable is kind of the hedge fund industry. That is pretty opaque. Access to it is very restricted. It's very hard for an individual with not much money to get involved. I think one of the things that drew me to crypto was the idea of permissionlessness. And I think really the comparable that we're fixing here is that kind of lack of transparency, that opacity, and that like lack of access. Anyone can go and get involved in a vault that acts almost like it could be a professional prop trader managing that vault for one trade. And that's something that you can have access to that you wouldn't have access to in kind of traditional finance. And I think that's quite an empowering thing.
Yeah, I think the prop desk comparison is something I've heard a lot. I've had a lot of feedback from like some of my friends, some of the best traders I know, that said that they kind of see this as a way for communities to form kind of their own decentralized prop shops almost. But it's kind of also more efficient in that you don't have the burden of profit. So you don't wake up at 9 o'clock having to make X amount of trades or having to meet X amount of profit. It's built around the edge that you do have, or the skills that are provable. So it's kind of built around you as a trader. And it's like, how scalable is what you can prove, is what you can show, or what you've built up. And that in itself can be like, so instead of the trust factors of saying, well, you literally need to dox to a prop shop and go and work there as like a literal employee. Instead of that, it's kind of being able to be a participant in those kind of worlds as a wallet. And that to me is kind of the core principle at base level of like DeFi, is saying all of those financial, like the financial world, like TradFi, and all of those things that happen in behind the smoke and mirrors, and with all kinds of trust factors that are built up in all kinds of convoluted ways, is that we remove as many of those trust factors as possible so that wallets can just participate as a wallet. So this, you could see this as a way for communities to form prop shops around like individuals or wallets or strategies themselves, or maybe even Discord communities. Like this is one thing when Murad and I spoke about it initially, I saw this as a way for me to like literally scale my own server and say there are people in there that are like the best at execution. Because obviously sometimes we all have the same trade idea, and there are people that win more than others on the same idea. And so that in itself is kind of a reason why some people like, so for example, like over the history of Bitcoin, the majority of people that have known about it have probably longed it, and yet not everyone's a millionaire, not everyone's traded it to the degree that like some people have that have excelled. So there are some people that are just way better at the trade, even if we have the same idea. And I've seen that in my own server, so that's what I see it for.
I mean, one other thing is that it's kind of no secret that the hedge fund industry is insanely profitable, and a lot of that profit comes from, of course, management fees and performance fees, but it kind of it concentrates in the hands of very few people. Without saying too much about STFX, one thing that's really empowering about DeFi is that kind of tokenization of protocols, where anyone can get exposure to the underlying protocol itself. And I won't say any more than that because Murad might get angry with me. But there are things coming that facilitate access at a deeper level than just I'm going to open a vault.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the exciting thing, is that it starts at its base level from sharing trades and communities forming around that. But what we can do from there, like that, is kind of like crazy. but I'm not sure how much detail we can go into. That's I'll leave that to Murad.
Yeah, I would say the difference kind of between TradFi and DeFi in this sense, it's numerous, right? And first of all, when it comes to traditional finance, somebody recently joked that TradFi is pretty much just a more opaque DeFi for rich people, right? with like kind of like a
Yeah.
lot of red tape and bureaucracy and everything like this. So, in my opinion, there's just like so many advantages to do everything that we're talking about in a decentralized space, right? It's more decentralized, it's more trustless, there's less bureaucracy. The time to launch any kind of like mini fund or single trade vault or vehicle like that is like literal seconds as opposed to months, right? The cost to launch is like cents instead of tens of thousands of dollars. There is like very low investment minimums. Currently, our investment minimum is $20, and we plan to make it like even smaller. Obviously, because this is all like blockchain based, it's all essentially auditable and trackable in real time. The fact that we're focused on one trade at a time instead of a multi-year portfolio means that the mental time from investment to result is like between hours and days instead of quarters to years, right? But obviously, similarly, lockup periods are smaller. Because we're focused on single trades as opposed to portfolios, the time to build a track record is smaller. The amount of investable instruments, I think, like we can integrate protocols, different kinds of decentralized exchanges and decentralized derivative exchanges that exist across chains, right? For in a traditional world, you'd have to go like find broker A in country B to trade asset C. Then you need to find broker D to trade asset E in a country F, et cetera, right? Obviously, like we are going to have like cross-chain investment like options. We're going to have like more social and gamified experiences, like things like leaderboards, different achievements, badges, etc. Like all of that is coming. We have early previews of that already, but we are going to kind of be building that even more and more. Most importantly, I would say it's the following thing, right? And this is something I call kind of like the psychological difference. When you're managing a portfolio, and even in the crypto world, like both in the traditional finance world or in the crypto world, when you're managing like a long-term portfolio or a long-term fund, essentially every morning you wake up, and let's say you wake up at 8 a.m. or whatever, you have to go out there and find like a trade. You need to find an investment. You need to find an opportunity. So you have this thing called the continuous burden, like a continuous anxiety of performance, right? Here, there's something very unique and something different. So because we're only focused on one trade at a time, you as a manager have the option to only use the platform whenever you truly think that there is an opportunity, or whenever you truly personally think your personal edge is essentially like lighting up a signal, right? When you think the market is dislocating, right? And once that trade is done, you can go away for 3, 4, 8 months, however long you want, before your next idea, before your next trade, right? So there's none of this continuous like multi-year performance anxiety. It's really just maybe 1 or 2 weeks at a time, or really just days at a time. And in between the STVs, you don't have to do anything, right? So almost like a sniper, you can pick your spots. And I think that's a very unique and interesting difference that is going to invite a lot more people to try their hand at this thing, as opposed to being like a full-time, a decade-long portfolio manager, right?
Yeah, I think that's true even in crypto. Like, I mean, there are protocols that allow you to kind of tokenize a portfolio, like generally kind of allow people to like copy trade or like some form of asset management, but it's so kind of generalized and basically just the same inefficiencies that we see in TradFi. And I think kind of we took a different approach and said, how can we do it like more efficiently? How can we like decompose it so that like when people recompose it themselves, they have their own strategies, and it's much more efficiently around how money actually moves in these markets, which is exciting kind of, because really when you look at like anything like I've looked into before in crypto that's about asset management is something akin to like either like a trusted vault that somebody can just kind of take the money from, do whatever they want with. There's no kind of tie to say I want to long Bitcoin, so I can only actually trade the Bitcoin pair. And then the other side to that is that hang on one second. Yeah, the other side to that is that people often sorry, 1 second.
He's getting rugged.
Nearly. Dog's just fine. Like, go on, bro.
I was going to say I was going to fill the gap by saying that the vault managers, of course, only get paid if they generate money, right? So there's kind of that kind of incentive there that's quite interesting with us.
If on both sides with crypto at the moment, if you want to like do some form of asset management, it's often just a tokenized version of your own portfolio. So it's just kind of a weighting tool. So somebody's just buying a load of X or like selling Y, and they've got like generally like 8 assets within it, and you can tokenize that. And I think that's really inefficient. Like, it's generalized and there's like locked terms, and this is like breaking it down to this allows you to say, how do you want to copy trade? How is it that you actually want to copy somebody or like scale into what they're doing, instead of just generally just like copying just like and also the incentives are misaligned then, because it's not about each trade. It's not about making everything profitable. It's just about like a portfolio weighting, which is a kind of a different approach than I've ever taken with trading. I think portfolio weightings can often be inefficient with asset management. It's kind of like a way to say, oh, over the year I've kind of outperformed Bitcoin by X degree, but really you're not actually looking for the opportunity in the moment. And this is kind of an opportunist stream, this exchange.
I think something else that ties into this pretty closely is the idea between the thoughts between short-term asset management and long-term asset management. And this, of course, is coming from the perspective of an industry where the term like long-term has a much different meaning than it does in like TradFi. Like long-term in crypto, I don't know, to me is like a month, maybe. Narratives switch up so quickly in this space. I just truly wonder what your thoughts on like that whole kind of thought process is there, especially when it comes to STFX.
Sure.
So I do see longer term trades like being a large part of the exchange, but I think kind of the bulk of volume and vaults you'll see will naturally just be like low time frame. just because there'll just be a lot more of them. There's like 10 trades in a day versus one in the week kind of thing. So we'll naturally see a lot more of them. But I do think you'll see, like, basically however you trade, there'll be some way to scale it. Because if you're a macro trader, I mean, it goes hand in hand to say, if you only have one great idea every couple of months, then scale that to the maximum that you can and invest as much as you can and get a carry on managing that vault. That kind of goes hand in hand with like macro traders as well. But yeah, long term to me in crypto does mean like something completely different to traditionally. Uh, maybe even months is long term in crypto.
I think another thing is that you with crypto, the way it moves, it tends to be very event driven, right? It's like everything's a meta or it's a narrative or something. And so it's kind of inherently short term. Like a lot of good crypto trades are bets on, the evolution of something 2 weeks from now rather than 4 months from now. It's not to say that you can't make money betting 4 months ahead, but most of the volume and most of the excitement, I guess, comes from betting on events that are inherently short term. Some people make a lot of money being long Bitcoin for 5 years, but I think, for us, I think at least for me, a lot of the excitement is that event driven trading is now kind of quote unquote vaultified.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the edge in execution, you could say, is probably in the lower time frame. As you zoom out, there's probably less and less edge in directional trading. But as you zoom in, as you kind of decrease the vault fundraising time, there's kind of more and more edge to saying you're the best at trading, so best at kind of executing. So not just having the idea, but actually clicking the buttons. There's like wild differences in execution. Some of the best traders I know don't really have a clue on the prediction side, and they're more kind of great at reaction and actually kind of saying, here's where I enter, here's an invalidation, and here's an exit, which is a skill that I'd say like 99.9% of people just don't have, even if they have the skill of prediction. It, like, the actual execution side is more difficult, and like low time frame, that's more and more and more of an edge. As you zoom in more, you require more and more edge. Basically, you kind of against a more and more difficult like audience up until the 5 minute chart where you kind of against the exchanges, you could say. So like, I mean, I would say that, yeah, we will see kind of macro use of this, and that will probably be a large part of it, how community finds their own way to scale their own edge. But the highest edge is in low time frame.
Totally agree there. Yeah, and I think maybe just to be conscious of time here as well. I'd love to maybe just jump into real quick your kind of your schedule. First of all, when launch. Number two, maybe for when you guys do launch, do you have an idea of like what's going to be out and maybe what's going to be coming post that? Roadmap stuff.
So right now we have launched our version of a testnet, let's say. So it's alpha mainnet launch, which is a limited version of the platform. The vaults are there and they're limited in size for the trading competition. So we've got $100,000 in up to $100,000 in prizes for the top 20. And that's kind of us hard testing all of the features. Over the next few weeks, we'll bring out new features every week so that we can hard test and see how community likes them. And our goal is to release like details across the trading competition, but basically as soon as the trading competition is up, we'll be looking for like to launch. And on launch, again, we have the mindset of like not giving community kind of not telling them this is how you should use it. So we want to create it in a way where people will find their own metas and we can build around that instead of saying, here's exactly how, like, fully built up, everything's already there, so that like that there's no room for like shaping it around how people trade. And I think that's how we built our competition up. So we want to see kind of as much trading as possible within the competition up to like main launch after, or soon after, so that we can get as much feedback about what features need to be there on launch. Because obviously, if you kind of confuse, if you obfuscate too much, if you put too many features on something on launch, it's just kind of a bit too fiddly, let's say. So we're trying to make sure that we have it as like people can just use it to trade how they already trade, and then the social features that you'll see, those kind of build up. We have teasers for them now, but as Murad said, those build up around kind of how people are using the platform. And we're getting some like incredible feedback right now inside our own Discord server about what kind of things they already see us focusing on and like being important on launch. Yeah, I think like Murad could probably speak a bit more about like vault capacity, like on launch, but generally speaking, very soon after competition.
Yeah, so we have so many different things coming. So first of all, right now, as we've already mentioned, for the sake of this kind of alpha mainnet, our vaults are capped at $200. However, as early as late November, early December, we already want to raise the maximum capacity of the vaults to 50,000. And then eventually in early 2023, we want to make kind of the default 100,000 USDC, right? Right now we're using USDC, but we also plan on adding kind of other stable coins like DAI and USDT to also be available on the platform, as well as potentially ETH itself. And I'm talking about the collateral for the vault, sort of like the actual currency that you invest in. Other than that, we're currently working on filters, search, much more detailed profile and past performance for all the managers and investors respectively. We also are working on kind of having chats, comments, and updates inside of each STV. And another potential thing we're working on is something we call intra STV governance, which essentially means that, let's say there's one manager and 5 investors in an STV. So like a super majority of investors can, for example, either close the position or stop the position earlier, etc. Right? So let's say if like more than 75% of the kind of assets invested in an STV wanted to stop earlier, they could do that, right? We have over 60 or 70 ideas or additional features that we want to add. On top of everything that I've already mentioned, I think the most important thing is integrations, right? We already have successfully integrated GMX on top of Arbitrum. We're also doing some work on other integrations that you will hear about soon as well. But I think essentially right now we're focused on perps, like I said, because it's kind of like the most well-known product in crypto. We might add kind of like 1 or 2 more perp-focused integrations. Beyond that, our next step, we're probably going to be focused on spot assets, right? So instead of trading kind of perpetual futures or perpetual derivatives, we want people to be able to create and invest in STVs that are simply focused on trading kind of spot assets, right? And this, like everything that I mentioned, is essentially our roadmap for the next kind of like 3 or 4 months.
Thanks for the overview. Yeah, and I mean, I think this is definitely going to be something that's going to fit very, very nicely into the DeFi Lego stack. That's like being built out, like it's even taller and taller. I feel like as time goes on. I guess in this one, not even taller, more so like horizontally. Like you guys like adding literally like a new kind of Lego to the stack. It's really cool.
That's literally exactly what it is. We actually wrote an article about this called "From kind of like DeFi to GameFi to SocialFi," and essentially, like if you think of Ethereum as like for the first floor and Arbitrum as the second floor, and then GMX as the third floor, we are essentially on the fourth floor, right? We're kind of building even on top of that, right? And we want to be that social stack between kind of like all the investment money that's flowing around in the DeFi space and kind of like different managers trading ideas, right? And we're essentially like using all of these kind of plug and play building blocks to build on top of them. And we kind of think like there's like so many different combinations of these that you can like come up with.
I think the building block thing is fun. Is a fun analogy, even with like inside our platform itself. Each vault is almost like a building block for you to build up like a strategy. So you could, I mean, there are already strategies to say, I copy trade X trader during like bull run, and then I copy somebody else during bear market. And it's kind of like, it's like a building block. So each vault is like a strategy, like a building block to say an overall strategy instead of just like copy trading. Yeah, building blocks is probably my favorite analogy, like Lego bricks kind of thing, because you can see it all stacked together in the same way that you stack trades to ultimately get to like your yearly ROI kind of thing. This is kind of a way to stack this on vaults.
Awesome. So I think we can maybe bring one individual up at the very least, only because I want to be cognizant of time. And I know we just went over.
Sure.
Let me go ahead and bring up Matt over here, or Marusha, I guess. They've been waiting here for a little while. Let's see if they're still there.
Hello, bro. You there, Maru?
Hello, everybody. How are we doing today?
Hello, brother. Chilling, bro.
Yeah,
How you doing?
good.
Did
What do
you
you
have
got?
a question for us?
No, it was already on a request mic when you guys were talking about prop desk, most likely.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know you spoke about that with us before in the server, so that's something I know you already have like brought up with us.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. We appreciate you coming up.
Yeah, thanks, bro. It's been good to see you like taking such a heavy part in the competition, bro. You've been killing it, gotta say. All right. Well, thanks for coming up. I'm sure we probably covered your question anyway, so that's fine. Is there anything else anyone wants to ask before we go?
Just in case, I usually tend to end off every AMA with the following: if anyone in the crowd is interested in either joining the community or even like contributing in any way, what would be the best way for them to do that?
So, platform side, the trading competition is kind of the main thing. We have a trading competition where you can use the platform, like a bare bones version of the platform, limited to $200 to make sure that everybody like competing. It's more about like ROI, and we're hard testing all the features. So, taking part in the trading competition with up to $100,000 prizes on our platform would be the main thing. But like, our community is also heavily active inside of our Discord server. We're basically more like an alpha trading server. So, I mean, you should probably, like, if you're listening to this and you're not already there, you should probably just check out the Discord server, see the trading channel, and you'll probably find like some trades that you want to actually invest in yourself. But yeah, those are the two things that I would say. So most of our announcements, all of our announcements, you'll find inside the Discord server, and we're just there permanently. The team's just there to answer anything. And then at the trading competition with up to $100,000 prizes, the top 20 will receive prizes, and they're pretty wild. So those are the two best ways.
Great. In that case, I really appreciate you guys for coming on today. We look forward to your launch.
Thank you very much. Cheers
Absolutely,
for coming.
man.
Cheers for having
Thank you for having us, and always a pleasure to deal with other members of the Arbitrum community.
Thanks,
Yes,
guys.
for sure. Thank you.
Log me. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.